Hey, BookTube, long time no see. I have been MIA, but life happens sometimes, so without further ado, I'm back, and I thought, what better video to come back to than in honor of my birthday month that has just started. 25 books I would like to read before I'm 25. So I have divided this into 5 categories: nonfiction, classics, things that fall into mystery, thriller, horror, suspense novel zone. There is a miscellaneous category, and then the 5th one is series. And on the 5th one, it's 5 series that I either want to start, continue, or hopefully finish. Maybe not, maybe even all 3 of the above statements, but I'm only going to say the name of the series, and I'm under no actual pressure to finish any of these series because most of these are quite long, but I just are wanting to either start or continue or finish because I'm in the middle of, I think, at least one of the series that's on this list. But without further ado, we will start in the nonfiction zone. The 5 nonfiction books I would like to read before I turn 25. And I'm going to help myself out a little bit because I've already technically started 2 of these, but I've barely read any, so it's not like I'm cheating that much, right? Is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. I know he's recently come out with a sequel, but this basically is from the dawn of time to where humans are in either... I think, basically it brings us all the way to, present day humanity. So that's exciting, and it's just the development of the species that we are. And I know the sequel is Homo Deus, I believe. So it's, from here to where humankind is going in the future. So I'm excited to read it. I heard it's very informative, and it's very just interesting to kind of see if you understand the full history of, your own species. So... yay, nonfiction, number 1. I'm surrounded by books. It's very difficult to figure out where to place things. And then the other book I've already started is Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot. I do consider myself a feminist, and I'm working continually on being a better person overall. And I think to consider myself a feminist, I really need to understand what people who don't look quite like me have experienced due to this movement. And I'm hoping that this challenges me and is very informative, and so far I like the writing style. Again, I've read 10 whole pages, but I think this book does talk about very important issues, and I've heard nothing but good things about it, so I am excited to continue reading and hopefully learn quite a bit from this book. The next book I would like to read is Running with Scissors, and I forgot the author, but I will have it written somewhere on the screen. This is a memoir, and I've heard very good things about it from a few different people and it's the guy's name. Let me just pause it and find the author's name. The author's name is Augustin Burroughs, so Running with Scissors by Augustin Burroughs. It is a memoir, and basically, as far as I'm aware, it is a true story of a boy whose mother, a poet, gave him away to be raised by her unorthodox psychiatrist who bore a striking resemblance to Santa Claus. And what I was told about this book is you cannot make the stuff up that this guy goes through. So I think it'll just be a fun, crazy, and just informative memoir to read. Additionally, as a memoir, I am going to read, and I'm looking up the author again because I forgot to write these down, clearly. I believe it's Trevor Noah, sorry. Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. Stories from a South African Childhood. I have always kind of wanted to read this, and I'll probably do this one on Audible because I've heard the audiobook production is great. But I think it's obviously a memoir about Trevor Noah, and it's a coming-of-age story about his life and what he went through living in apartheid South Africa and to where he is at this point in his life now, which I believe he's the guy from The Daily Show. I really don't know a lot about him as an actual person, but I think this memoir will be very informative for that. And then, last but not least, in the nonfiction category, I would like to read The Radium Girls. The Dark Story of America's Shining Women by Kate Moore. So I believe this is kind of what happens after Marie Curie discovers like the radioactive elements in plutonium, I believe. I love science and technology and things like that, so I love reading about it, and I typically read astrophysics in terms of like the science category, but I thought I would branch out into the nuclear space because it sounds interesting. But what the blurb in the back says: the Curie's newly discovered wonder drug shines bright in the otherwise dark years of the First World War, and hundreds of young girls toil amid the glowing dust of the radium dial factories until they begin to fall mysteriously ill. As the factories try to cover up the shocking secret, these determined shining girls suddenly find themselves embroiled in one of the biggest scandals of America's earliest 20th century. So I think this will be very informative. It'll definitely shine a light on what happened to these women, hopefully, and I'm just generally very excited to read it. Alright, in the next section we're going to touch on that I want to read before I turn 25 is the classics. Starting off with Don Quixote, and they're both the same Don Quixote. This one's just in English and this one's in Spanish. I pretend I know some Spanish sometimes, so I thought it would, just due to the length of this book, I'm going to primarily focus on reading it in English. However, I think if something is really cool, I kind of want to try and see if I can get the full experience, so I found this really super awesome Spanish, like, academic version of it at my bookstore here. And so I'm excited to read it. I will say it like has like Bible-thin pages, so it's just wild. But, so yes, Don Quixote is a classic I would like to read before I hit 25. I was going to maybe read it with the Big Book Club. I'll link their info down below. They have, Bookish Topics is the YouTube channel that runs it, and she's really funny and awesome. So I was going to read it with them, but I literally joined after they'd already started, and I wasn't particularly motivated at that time because I was waiting till I could get a copy in Spanish, which took forever, so I'm excited to still read it, though, at some point within the next year. The next book I would like to read is, classic novel, is Boris Pasternak's Dr. Shivago. I have this very nice old version, and I don't really know a lot about this novel except for the fact that it's translated by Max Hayward and Manya Harari, and it is a novel of the Russian literature group, and I really have loved the amount of Russian literature I've read so far, which has mostly been Tolstoy, but needless to say, I'm very excited to read this, and I will hopefully enjoy it. So yeah, I don't really know anything about it, but it's on my to-do list for this year. So yes, Dr. Shivago. The next classic book I would like to read is, in this little series here that comes after the Three Musketeers. It starts with the Vicomte de Bragelonne, and yes, this is technically a group of books I could have put in the series category, but I've already read the second one last year during the reading rush, and I got the first and third one for Christmas because I didn't really realize it was a trilogy. So I would like to read Alexander Dumas's Vicomte de Bragelonne, and theoretically The Man in the Iron Mask, but I'm not adding that to this list. Gotta have options and variety and all that. So May 1660, the fate of nations is at stake. There's plots, there's romance, there's drama, and D'Artagnan from the Three Musketeers is still in this book. I really enjoyed the second one, and I'm very excited to read this. I think I can confidently say that Alexander Dumas is one of my favorite authors, so excited to continue exploring more of his classic works. The next book I'd like to read is specifically the story of Antigone. I've already technically read Oedipus the King in high school, but I think I'm going to just try and read this whole little version, or this whole little multiple short stories by Sophocles. So it's Antigone, Oedipus the King, and Electra. I'm excited to try and tackle some more like classical literature, so to speak. I love Greek mythology, and I want to read more of the source material, if that makes sense. And last but not least, in the classics category, I'd like to read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I don't honestly know if I'm going to like this one very much, based on the books that other people like when they also like this book. I don't really like a lot of the similar books, but I'm excited to give it a shot, and yeah, just expanding my classics repertoire, for sure. And the next category of books is the thriller, horror, mystery, suspense, and without further ado, let's get into that. Alright, so to start, I would like to read Ruth Ware's In a Dark, Dark Wood. I've never read anything by Ruth Ware, but I found this at Half Price Books a while back, so... And I meant to read it, like, in October when I bought it, but clearly that did not occur, so... Better late than never. Reese Witherspoon says I'm going to need to be prepared to be scared, really scared. That's what it says on the front. So I assume people go to the woods and there is some murder and mystery and suspense. So, yep, I'm excited. The next book I'd like to read is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I have not read that book. I've read a lot of his books. They're all just out of frame up there, but yeah, I've heard that's one of his actually scarier novels. I don't really feel like I've been scared by that many of his novels. They're more just very creepy and suspenseful to me. So I'm excited to theoretically be scared and also just continue to make it through my Stephen King reading needs or something like that. Not that they're needs, they're just things I want to read by Stephen King. The next book that I would like to read is Agatha Christie's Death on the Nile. I have wanted to read more Agatha Christie. I've only read Murder on the Orient Express, and as the movie is coming out at some point this year, I would like to read this before I see the movie. So, which I did not do for Murder on the Orient Express, so I already knew it was going to happen, and I want to read the book first this time. So basically, there's a cruise on the Nile. Our good detective, Hercule Poirot, I do not speak any French at all, is on said cruise, and there's probably a murder. And then Hercule, or whatever, has to solve the mystery. The next book I would like to read in this category is Tom Clancy's The Hunt for Red October. I've read a few Tom Clancy novels, but I need to read more of them based on the fact that I like a lot of his novels. I know this one is a Jack Ryan novel, and this is during the Cold War is when it's set, due to, the Russia communism emblem on the front cover. But I don't know a lot more than that. I think I saw the movie that came out many, many years ago when I was super young, and I don't really remember it, which will be better for me reading the book. That is, if there's even a movie and I'm not crazy at the moment. The last book in the mystery suspense category I'd like to read is Deep Fathom by James Rollins. I love his books. This one, it looks like there is some solar flares and some natural disasters, and a character named Jack Kirkland has to prevent nuclear apocalypse and other world-ending disasters. I'm very excited to read it. I love the way James Rollins writes. I literally read most of his books in nearly one sitting because, yeah, they're a little chunky, especially when they're the mass market paperback versions, but they are so, so good. So good. The next section is what I'm qualifying as miscellaneous, and for the most part, I'm trying to... I think this is the category that has the most books that I don't own yet, besides the series one. But I would like to read Beloved by Toni Morrison. I've not read any Toni Morrison yet, and I've heard they're exceptional, I hear they're emotional, and they talk about really important topics, so I don't know a whole lot about this one except for what the back says, and I kind of don't really want to because I want to just get the most that I can out of the book, so Beloved by Toni Morrison. Ayn Rand's We the Living. I've read all of Ayn Rand's other books, and I don't necessarily, just to defend my own reading choices, I guess. I don't really read her books because I agree with them. I read Ayn Rand's books for just discussion over interesting, more heavy political topics usually, and due to the fact that her books really make me think. And I really like the writing, and I usually like also the plot. This one is set during the Russian Revolution. I've read Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead, which is right here, which are some of my favorite books, so I'm just excited to read her very first published novel. And I believe that will conclude all of the books that she's written that I have read from her, so I'm excited to just have some deep thought about the topics in this book. And like it, I can see that we have Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit over there. I have not read the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien, and this is a legendary precursor, and I think it really did a lot of the like building out of the world that you don't get in the other books. So I would like to read it. And the two books I don't yet own from this section are this is a Iranian and French author, I believe, Nagar Djawadi, and translated by Tina A. Cover. It's called Disoriental, and I was trying to look for some books about just by more authors from different countries that I haven't read before, so this book sounded really interesting. And the main character fled Iran at the age of 10 with her mother and sisters to join her father in France. And there's a whole lot about family and cultural identity and things like that, and I haven't read anything by an Iranian author before that I know of, so I just wanted to branch out and try that. And the last book, and I have to look up who the author is real quick, is the Barefoot Woman, I believe. I wrote the author's name down, but I can't read my own handwriting clearly. Oh yes, it's called, The Barefoot Woman by Scholastique Mukasonga, which is, I believe the author is from Rwanda, and I don't honestly believe I've read anything from that country either, and it is a translated work, this version, at least the one that's on Goodreads, says translated by Jordan Stump, and it's about, it's a moving, unforgettable tribute to a Tutsi woman who did everything to protect her children from the Rwandan genocide, and the daughter who refuses to let her family story be forgotten. And that was the Rwandan genocide was a very tragic moment in history, and I have enjoyed a few of the movies or historical documentaries that I've watched on that. They're heartbreaking, obviously, but they're just a thing you can really learn from. So I'm excited to read this more personal story, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. I can't really tell from this little excerpt here, but I'm excited to read it and just experience the world through their eyes, and also read another translated work. And last but certainly not least is the series that I either want to start or continue making progress on in the next year by reading. And I'll consider this little goal marked off if I just read one more book than I have if I've already started the series, or if I just read a single book in the series. But basically, I'd like to continue reading and ideally finish, this is the only one that I'm going to say I would really like to finish, is The Wheel of Time. I have not yet gotten back on that train. I'm trying to finish reading a few other things and make it through one more trilogy before I go back to that. But then when I do, I'm going to really just focus on it and kind of binge read it, so to speak, ideally. But yes, The Wheel of Time. I'm currently on book 6, I believe. Also, the only thing in the Cosmere that I have not read is the White Sands graphic novel series. I think it's a series, so I would like to read that. I would also like to start and ideally complete, because I would like to do this before going back to the Wheel of Time, the Broken Earth trilogy, starting with the 5th season. But if I decided to take this more slowly, then I'll go back to the Wheel of Time before that. But I would like to at least start this book. Also, my brother lent this to me, and he's going to need it back eventually, so and definitely just start, have no expectations of completing, is The Discworld by Terry Pratchett. I bought 3 of the books, but there's literally, I think, over 40, so I don't really expect that I will finish the series, but I would like to at least start and make good progress on it. And last but certainly not least, because I'd like to start watching the TV show, is I would like to start reading the Expanse series. We might see. Excuse me. The Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. The first book is titled Leviathan Wakes. These are big guys for sure, so I don't know if I'll make it through the whole series, but I would like to probably read a few before I start the TV show. I'm really big about needing to read something before I watch the media adaptation, because otherwise I will never read it. And I've been wanting to read more sci-fi, and I thought I've heard such great things about the series, and I'm really excited to try and dive into it. So, yep. So that was the 25 books I would like to read before I turn 25. And I tried to pick the majority of the books that I already owned because I have a whole new like TBR shelf now that is like literally a 5 shelf, very large bookshelf, and it's just a lot. And I need some more motivation to get through these. Also, a lot of these are already on the TBRs that I set for this whole year, which I figured is fine because I picked a lot of books that I really wanted to read this year, and I have more months in this year than I will in 2022 to reach this goal, so to speak. Excuse me. So yeah, with that being said, I'm glad to be able to post a video on YouTube here. Again, it's been a hot minute. Coming soon is Kat and I's discussion on the noble acts of King Arthur and his Noble Knights by John Steinbeck, and we're about to start reading East of Eden here soon. I don't know if I'll post as many videos as often as I did before I disappeared, but I do enjoy making this content and getting to talk about books on the internet with you guys. So, without further ado, I will say goodbye, and I will see you guys next time. Like, subscribe, do the things. Let me know if you have any big goals about books that you want to read before you hit a certain age down in the comments. Thank you, guys.